Welcome back. You're still watching Business Morning on Channels Television. We turn our focus now to another conversation entirely. We'll be talking about the upcoming 7th Lagos Economic Summit, and it's going to be focused on power. I'm being joined now in the studios by two gentlemen, the Commissioner for Energy and Natural Resources of Lagos State, Mr. Taofik Tijani, and an investment analyst, Mr. Ehingbeti. Good morning, gentlemen, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you.
So, power. That's an interesting topic because it's been on the front burner now for a very, very long time, and it's a good thing that Lagos State is deciding to talk about it now, especially since it's a commercial hub of the nation. But why now? Why are they talking about it now? Why didn't they talk about it last year?
Well, as you're aware, power is something that's very strategic to the nation and to a state like Lagos State. Lagos State has over 21 million people and is the commercial nerve center of Nigeria. We need to talk about it now because this is a time that even the federal government is privatizing all the distribution and generation infrastructure. So we need to use the opportunity to bring in all the investors, that could really play a part in making sure we move along and move upward on the power generation and distribution, for Nigeria and for Lagos State.
Mr. Ehingbeti, looking at what he's just said now, in terms of attraction of investment, how much are we going to see, based on the fact that the government has now decided as much as possible to champion this cause, at least for the state? How much investment are we going to see coming into Lagos?
I think I would personally project that we'll see major, significant investment in the power sector in Lagos State. The case for Lagos is overwhelming. It's by far the largest center of commercial activity in Nigeria. The non-oil economy of Nigeria is overwhelmingly concentrated in Lagos. It's the financial hub, it's the commercial hub, it's the media hub. So it's a significant place. The population is large, there's a middle class, and therefore, for the private investor, and I agree entirely with what the commissioner said in relation to your point about timing. This is, for the first time, we now have essentially a private sector dominated power industry in Nigeria. So this is the point at which an investor can say, okay, I see such a huge power gap in Lagos State, and I think there's an opportunity to fill it.
But then you see, we still have this issue of infrastructure financing. Has that challenge actually, been addressed, or is it looking to be addressed?
Well, you see, the good thing is that the dynamics are now private sector determined. So a bank, an investor, a global energy company can look at Lagos, can decide, I want to do a 1,000 megawatt independent private power station. He can look at his financing from the private sector. He can look at sign a contract with a co or with the Ikeja, a private sector entity. So all the dynamics have, yes, he still has to think in terms of transmission about government. The transmission segment is still controlled by government, but most of the elements involved are now private sector departments. So the financial issues can more easily be tackled. He can determine what the risks are, and he can build mitigants into it.
Well, Mr. Tijani, he mentioned the fact that, apart from the fact that the private sector needs to really run this show, the government also has a very strong responsibility, and their own share should it just be that they would just leave, just do things and not leave it completely done, and so the private sector comes in and is struggling, because that's what we're seeing right now. We have these companies that have taken over the discos and the gencos, and it seems as if they're struggling because government has not really played its role as properly as it should have.
Yeah, well, we have a role to play, and we have been playing that role. I need to put it here too that Lagos State has actually demonstrated the need for a private investor, to put in something in power. We've done some, captive power in Lagos State. We've done captive power for the island in Lagos. We've done for our water distribution. We've done for even the Alausa Secretariat where we are. So we are aware that it's important to have what we call a PPP, probably private partnership in moving forward. But as a state, we're also a stakeholder in the distribution companies. Yes. And being a stakeholder, we're there to make sure that they get everything right, you know, the right of way, the physical planning permit, and we've met the governor himself, Mr. Ehingbeti, and has met with my team with the different Eco Disco and the Keja Disco to discuss on how we can support, we can assist, and we can play our role in the right way.
But before now, there were legal obstacles as to the delivery of electric power by the states. What's the status of this legislation now?
In terms of legal between the Ecodisco or which one?
Between the private owners of these companies and the states.
Well, the only legal action I can recall is the issue of the Aaron badge. You know, remember about 2000, the first intervention Lagos State was making into generating power. We brought in a 320 megawatts Aaron badge to supply power to Lagos State, and as you're aware, the federal government, said we as a state cannot, generate power. And what we agreed was that, okay, we'll let the power go to the national grid, but we want some quantum of that power to go to some specific areas of Lagos, and, the agreement was such that once we get those power in those areas, they can deduct the cost of that power from source, but the end result was that they were generating the power and it's still being generated. The money to be supplied to that source, was being deducted, but the power was not supplied. And this amounted to close to about over 12 billion naira, that the federal government through BP is now supposed to give Lagos. This discussion is still going on that, and I'm sure we'll get a result one way or the other.
Well, Mr. Ehingbeti, there's a school of thought that says that government is better positioned to finance infrastructure in this sector. Do you share this thought?
No, well, it depends. It depends. There's some type of infrastructures. I think generally, for instance, if we concentrate on the power sector, I agree that the transmission segment of the industry is best because it's something of a natural monopoly. You cannot duplicate transmission networks, and therefore you can't give that to a private player, because then he will hold the system by the jugular and he can charge extortionate profits, and it's even a strategic national infrastructure. So the transmission segment of it, but there is no reason why a private investor will not build an independent, is just to generate a product, electricity.
But why will but why will a private investor do that? Because I mean, he's not in it for charity. He's in it to make money.
He obviously will make money.
And so what if, for instance, he builds an IPP and then it doesn't seem to get the approval of government, or what the government is asking from him is a little too much, and he feels as if it's going to take out too much of his profit, then what?
That is why the industry model has to have a place for a very strong regulator, very technically competent regulator, who will also assume the role in conjunction with the public of consumer protection. And I think that the current electricity sector industry provisions as encapsulated in the Electric Power Sector Reform Act of 2005 establishes a good regulatory modality, the NERC, and therefore, so for instance, you can't build an IPP without a license. It's a regulated industry. You must obtain a license from government. The terms, the pricing, the terms of which you build it, you must sell that electricity generated into an electricity market that is regulated by government. Tariffs are fixed. Now, the regulator has to also be investor friendly. You must recognize that if the pricing and the structures discourage investment, nobody will invest. So, but I think that we have a current, at least from its early beginnings, I think the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission is trying to play that balancing act right. At least provide enough incentives to attract investors into the industry, but at the same time protect consumers and ensure that the industry runs in an orderly and non-prohibitive manner.
Well, but Mr. Ehingbeti, some people have actually complained about these tariffs that the NERC has actually come up with. They feel that it's choking. It's choking, honestly. And especially since, sorry, let me just quickly make this point, especially since they're not even seeing what they're paying for. It feels as if they're being cheated.
We need a lot of public education around the dynamics of the new electricity industry. What I will counsel or urge our people to do is to look at their total cost of power rather than look at it in segments. If you look at the total cost of power, so for instance, when you get power from a Disco or a Keja Disco, compare it with the hours when you use a generator or even an inverter, you will realize that it is in your interest to accept some modest cost of the Disco component of your power in order to reduce the generator component or inverter component of your power. The gap in cost between those three is still heavily skewed in favor of public electricity, which you get from the discos under the current system. So the total cost of power, if you look at it from that dimension, you would realize that you're still enjoying huge subsidies on public electricity.
Well, try convincing a lot of customers about that, because
but I also agree that
they're not happy.
I also agree that the discos have to up their game. I recognize that it's early days yet. The industry is new. The transition issues, there are gas supply issues, there are all of these other issues.
Coming to that gas supply issue
and so, but all of those have to be dealt with.
Yes, and so, you know, Mr. Tijani, yes. Mr. Ehingbeti has just actually taken the words out of my mouth. Right. Gas supply is very critical to the success of the power sector reform that we're trying to, you know, do right now, and then delivery of electricity. Right. Well, how confident are you about this, about the fact that we're going to have enough gas to power the plants?
Well, this to me is something that has to be a partnership between federal government, the upstream oil producers, and even the states. You know, to me, there's no way we can have all this gas if we don't really invest in the upstream sector in terms of developing the upstream gas that has to be treated and brought in. Today, we get about 1.5 billion standard cubic feet of gas through the Escravos-Lagos pipeline system to Lagos. And that's not even enough. They are doubling the capacity now. They are looping that pipeline. We don't know when it will be ready. You know? So what I believe is everybody has to be on board to see how we can put investment where it's supposed to be, and that's in upstream. We need to go there and tap into all these upstream assets and see how we can get that gas, treat it, and make it available. It could be, you know, some kind of a longer time than we expect, but we need to start.
What about the possibility of introducing alternative energy sources?
Well, that's a good one, you know, and Lagos has been promoting a lot in terms of renewable energy. You know, we've been, you know, promoting use of solar. We've had some solar street lights, which we deployed in several places, you know, using competent contractors. We've had people come to my ministry to talk about waste to energy, as much as we pioneered a mini waste to energy project, you know, in the particular market in Lagos State, and we're still going to do more in terms of waste. I've had people talk to me about wind energy. I know it's possible, but we need to work on that. Hydro, yes, you know, people tell me they can deploy an hydro power using the river current. We want to use a particular place as a pilot, you know, to see how we can go. So renewable, yes, is the way, but, you know, the technology, a bit still foreign to us, but we need to, you know, move ahead. And my ministry, Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources, is working in addition to an implementing agency under our ministry, the Lagos Electricity Board, you know, to make sure we proceed in making Lagos State at least a pioneer in most of the renewable energy.